Morning, everybody. Welcome to this wonderful building of Alvar Aalto, the Nordic House in Iceland, REYKJAVIK. We're very fortunate to be in this very charming city in this amazing country. And so I would like to say in the beginning, thank you to our hosts, Massimo Santanice and his colleagues, for having us here. There will be a lot of claps today, so yeah. So we're really fortunate to be here in this building and in the city. I will say a few words, then I'll pass it to my colleague Peter Elmlund and Michael Mahaffey. More or less, all three of us are going to cover why are we here. I would like to say that, my name is Tigran, and I'm director of the Center for the Future of Places in KTH Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, and I'm also an associate professor in urban planning and design. And our center has been now alive for almost 3 years, and we have done, I'm going to sound like President Trump now, amazing things. We've done amazing things. I'm not going to mimic him. That wouldn't be appropriate. I would really welcome, and I also put it throughout the day, to check our websites, www.cfp.abe.kth.sc, to see all the events we have. But this is a very unique event that we are here, and we call it the Pegasus Symposium. All our events have Greek mythological names. And there's even, I've developed a small dictionary of those, so I can pass that on later to see what it means. But this is an event which, and you can see here, which takes a topical issue. Today we're going to discuss the futures of public space and place and beyond in a way that we assemble a group of prominent international speakers, and sometimes it's connected also to a workshop that follows it, and I'll tell you about that in a second. And there's a moderator. So there's a standard form of a symposium, but we like to see it a little bit different. We're very fortunate that I'm really humble in the presence of so many people that, and probably amongst them have more than 100 books, but not just books, but I think the legacy they're all going to leave, or that are leaving to us, that have been their students or colleagues, it's amazing. So 10 of our keynote speakers today, I think you'll have a unique opportunity to hear their latest ideas about the future of public spaces and beyond. And we have a brochure, so I'm not going to go through exactly their bios. You can find that out through, and you can also get it through the net, but I'll mention who they are, of course. Just before that, the theme, this is the theme today. And this is all public spaces, and just shows these little images that I've been able to put last night in 10 minutes or 12, shows the complexity of public spaces and the cities that are sort of, if to use Spiro Kostov's words, the public spaces shape and compose our cities, but also the intricacy of social relationships and dynamics we have through the public realm and commons and so on. And our speakers today have discussed this from all different perspectives. We were trying to count the other day, I think we have almost around 15 disciplines amongst our 10 speakers. And that's amazing. So I think that's, we talk always about interdisciplinarity and getting together. We do stay in our silos, but sometimes we do meet and we work together. So this complexity here, I'm sure, is going to be reflected today. So it's an amazing group of people. Now they're not put here in any alphabetical order or how they look on the pictures, but it's Professor Ali Madanipour, Professor Seta Lowe, Professor Don Mitchell, Professor David Cantor, Professor Emily Talon, Professor Matthew Carmona, Professor Christine Boyer, Professor Julian Aguiman, Professor Nan Elin, and Professor Vika Smekta. So this is our lineup for today, and it's going to be a little bit different according to the program. There's 3 blocks we have. Professor Ash Amin and Richard Sennett could not be here, but they will contribute to something which is also a byproduct of this conference. Hopefully a beautiful book. I was joking with my friend Julian Aguiman, made from sandalwood. It's not going to be from sandalwood. It's going to be from environmentally conscious, paper. It will recycle itself in a few years if you read too much. So we'll put a book together after that. But also this is an introduction to what Peter and Mike will talk about, the public space data research project. Not to take too much time, to say for the others, I'm happy that we are in this wonderful building here. And I'm really grateful to all of you that have come here for this. And the question was, why Iceland? Well, it always feels like this is some kind of a floating Switzerland. And it's also between two continents. And when we came here, the taxis are rather expensive. And I think David and I paid even double. But we got a fantastic lecture about everything from seismology to sea rises of sea level and housing situation in Iceland. So it was money worth spent. Very interesting place. So it wasn't Iceland was an idea to bring also American colleagues halfway and our European colleagues also halfway. So welcome everybody, and the fact that we're streamed live it's cool. I mean, we're probably being watched by 250,000 Chinese colleagues right now, but that's okay. Americans are waking up, Seta? Yes, so everybody's online. And I think we should do this all the time. So I will, with that, I will just thank you once more, and I'm looking forward to a wonderful day. And I will pass the word to my colleague Peter Emmalin, the Director of Urban City Research at the Axelson Johnson Foundation.
So the chain of events that has brought us here today, I would say starts at a restaurant close to Union Square, Manhattan, 2012. I had a lunch with Fred Kent and his companion Kathy Madden, from PPS, and Cecilia Martinez, who at that time was the director for Urban Habitat in New York. It was just a social lunch, but we were lamenting the fact that while policies about cities are getting better and better, it will take 20 years or so before architects and planners will adapt to those policies. So we said, Jesus, we need to shortcut this discussion in order to reach out to the mayors and decision makers. We cannot wait 20 years. And I summarized, as I remember it, the discussion, we need to shift focus from objects to places. And after a few glasses of wine, I also offered to fund a conference with that theme. Cecilia put me in contact with the headquarters of UN Habitat in Nairobi. I went to them, and they were quite bold because they told me, we don't want to have one conference, we want to have 3. 2013, 14, and 15, leading up to the Habitat 3 meeting. Because we want to make sure that public space has its proper place in the new urban agenda. Okay, said and done. We arranged these 3 conferences and a lot of other activities on national levels. One big conference in Australia, I remember. And in total, we gathered 1,500 people from 100 nations, 275 cities, 700 organizations, and more women than men, actually, surprisingly. And, the result was that all language about public space in the new urban agenda and in the SDG 11.7 about public space comes from our key messages. And you can still find them on our website, www.futureofplaces.com, and a lot of the lectures that we had on these 3 international conferences. There was a lot of discussions after that, what we should do about this project, and there was a suggestion to create an international organization for the advancements of public space, of course funded by our foundation. But for different reasons, I declined that, and instead we ended up with this research center about the future of places at KTH. And one of the core projects there is what we internally call the database. And the database is a collection of field research tries to answer the question, what do we know about public space? And public space is a subfield within different disciplines. We don't have it as a specific academic field, but it could be if we develop it. So the database is a collection of the best field research we can find from the 60s and forward. And we're adding metadata in order to merge the knowledge. And Michael will present this a little bit more. So the reason we are here in Iceland is because we will have a workshop about the database tomorrow to secure the quality of it. But when we have done that, we will invite all of you to participate in the future. So we will contact all of you on an individual basis and ask you to participate. Coming back to language, shifting focus from objects to places. As you know, public space is a very misused and misunderstood concept. A very common narrative is it has something to do with democracy, That story is told over and over again in humanistic literature, textbooks, magazine articles, newspapers, etc. And it is, of course, pointing to a specific time and place in history, the antique Greece and the agora, which we understand was the creation of the democracy and also the public space. So a lot of the narrative today about public space is around democracy. Right to the city, cities for all, gentrification, privatization, securitization, etc. There's nothing wrong with that. But we have public spaces also in non-democratic countries. Even the worst countries and the worst dictators, we still have public spaces and public life. So it's something more than democracy. And words like democracy and freedom doesn't really give any good instructions to architects and planners. They can come up with almost anything with these words. And they did in the 60s. They were building all these failure projects under the name of freedom and democracy. So what is public space then? Yeah, for me, because I'm interested in design, it is of course the opposite of private space. Yeah? And all the behaviors that we connect between private and public spaces, all these behaviors are what makes up the city. And public space existed long before the antique Greece. You can ask the archaeologists about that. Probably existed long before we had cities. I guess the first settlements separated private behavior from public behavior, yes? And they assigned certain places for that. So it has a long story. So in order to influence architects and planners, we need to develop a stronger discourse around behavior, I would say. So we need to go back to the 60s, basically, and the start of environmental psychology and develop the thinking from that. That is the level of analysis where we can connect the design with behaviors and make some meaningful policies around it, instead of just talking about democracy, which of course is important. For your amusement, I will show you a few slides just to make my point. And yeah. One of my favorite thinkers around behaviors is Roger Barker, who was one of the fathers of environmental psychology. I guess you're aware of him and his concepts, behavior settings. And if you're not, it's about environment and behaviors. Most of our behaviors are actually place-based. I know that you're critical to Roger Barker. You don't have to say that, David. Anyhow, I think we can develop the concept of behavioral settings into something really meaningful. So, this is a typical behavioral setting, as you know. It's a bar. And according to some historians, the first bar, as we know it, was invented in Paris 1921 by a joiner called Emile Verrier. And at that time, bars were used as an intermediary station for the wine. So the waiters picked up the wine at the bar and took it to the guests. But Emile Verrier said we can make it more efficient if the customer comes to the bar and someone served them directly. But what he didn't understood probably was that he created a wonderful behavioral setting when you can talk to strangers suddenly, and maybe with the help of the bartender. 50 years later, we had 70,000 bars in Paris. And the mayor of that time said that suddenly half of the population of Paris is serving the other half. Yeah. So it was a very successful invention. So let's go out to the street then. This is Barcelona, Barceloneta. And here we have two interesting behavioral settings. The beach, where you can walk almost naked, and a square where you're supposed to be a little bit more dressed, but obviously you can take off your shirt, like the guy is doing here. I saw this scene for a few minutes. The lady you see here in front of the almost naked guy from Germany, I suppose, she never looked at him. She was not comfortable seeing this flesh. So she was looking like that, in that angle, all the time. So between those behavioral settings, we have this transition zone where something is a little bit unclear. They're very interesting things to study, how different behaviors can, what's happened between them. This is another picture where people are supposed to swim, but they don't do this here. I don't think any of you would be willing to dive into the pool at this moment when you have a fully dressed lunch at the same time. So the swimming behavior is a little bit outnumbered here, yes? If we flip the situation, 20 people are swimming and 1 people are having a fine lunch here, dressed up. It would not be so nice to sit there alone, yeah? So behaviors can be outnumbered, outcompeted by other behaviors, maybe. Which leads us to this very interesting picture. You know, it was in the world press for a while, where people are complaining about these burkinis. There was a lot of discussion about democracy, yeah? But this has nothing to do with democracy, this conflict. This is about when you're almost naked, you don't feel comfortable if people are dressed up. If you think about a sauna, if you go into a sauna and someone is fully dressed up in a sauna, not so nice. So if this type of behavior will grow, that type of behavior will disappear quickly. I don't think we can mix them on the same part of the beach. So I suggest we should have 1 part for the naked, 1 for the half naked, and 1 for the fully dressed. That's one solution. This is my favorite picture of the all. Here we have a funeral and a lunch within 2 meters. And the picture is an awarded picture, and the photographer who wanted to show class conflict, because the person who is buried here is a homeless person, and here you have the luxury lunch close to each other. But I think this is a wonderful picture that shows how different behaviors that doesn't really belong to each other can exist side by side if everything is well defined. You have a clear border for the restaurant. And traditional cities have this a lot, clear borders where we can assign behaviors so they can exist close to each other. Yeah. Finally, I took this picture. It's a bar, new bar in Stockholm, Haymarket Bar. It was so wonderful the first time I was here because you have these immigrants selling things in the market shops, very close to this mundane bar. So I went back to take this picture, and suddenly I realized the whole charm is gone. It is not so nice anymore. What has happened? So I went out to the market and asked the owners of this market shop, what has happened here? I don't know what, but something has happened that I don't like. And they explained to me that the municipality forced us to move the market shops 2 meters. Yeah? So the little room that was here, that connected the 2 different behaviors, was destroyed. So this fine-tunings, all these small measurements that are related to our behaviors, this is nothing that urban designers, architects understands at all. They're focusing on functions and aesthetics, mostly. Finally, placemaking, which was a part of the future places concept, is spreading, and I don't really like it because it's so commercialized. So in Stockholm now, we are introducing summer pedestrian streets, which basically we are taking already popular streets and making them even more popular. Then we destroy them instead of focus on the unpopular places. So here, up here you have Medborgarplatsen in the corner left. That's a place for drinking and get drunk, you know? And that behavior is in that quadrant. Down here we have Nytorg Square, which is the most creative place in Sweden. It's a hipster place. So now in the summer, they're transforming one of the streets here to a pedestrian streets. So the restaurants are selling cheap beer there. So the drunk behavior from the left is spreading and destroying then this very nice hipster place. And our poor decision makers, they're not evil, they just don't understand what they're doing. That is the problem. And we have to teach them that. Thank you very much.